Hey guys, welcome back to the Ramble. I am your humble host, Moreology here, as always, fast and bulbous. And this is Times Are Tough, part 6. Times are tough, gentlemen, times are tough. Every single day, it seems. There's some new nonsense from the ever so oppressed hordes, so lacking in clarity of thought and vision, so sheltered and so shamelessly swaddled, so hopelessly echo-chambered that they don't see themselves. They see a funhouse mirror reflecting themselves, a mirage, an illusion. I find this striking, and obvious. The solipsism on display, the navel-gazing and the narcissism growing, growling, expanding and exploding and becoming popular is disconcerting, to say the least. Do you remember that Democratic Socialist convention or whatever it was called of some years ago? The one with the quick point of personal privilege absurdity? The one with the don't use gendered language to address anyone nonsense? The one with the jazz hands? The one with the don't talk amongst yourself, I can't take the noise? The one with all the triggerings? The one that appeared to be a real life remake of South Park? Life sure as hell seemed to imitate art at the moment. Well, they seemed like a happy, well-adjusted and inclusive lot, didn't they? High-functioning, resilient, equal, inclusive and tolerant of other people's everything as they were. This was made most evident by the remarkable rules of conduct which they forced on other people for reasons of they themselves as selfish individuals not wanting to be triggered by the horrifying use of the word guys and similar horrible crimes against humanity. That is hurtful to everyone for being hurtful to that one person. The possibility that someone could be of a different opinion, a different state of mind, lesser levels, let's say, of frailty than that one person, does not come to mind. I am me and me must be all that is I in this group of me's, they seem to be saying, also known as the wise old saying, me, me, me. If it is true for me, then it must be true for everyone like me, because all exist in this world as a reflection of me sprung from my line of thought and my way of seeing. If I feel as though this is hurtful, everyone must feel the same and must comply. Anything else is unthinkable. And this is what the debacle left me with. The impression these people left on me after watching the whole spectacular implosion. It is not without reason that I refer to this whole social justice warrior thing as narcissism veiled as altruism. To me it is so obvious, so transparent. Anyone who believed that this whole thing would burn out and die as quickly as it came were, I am afraid to say, mistaken. The beast graduated from grievance studies and moved into positions of power, carefully navigating their way in, infiltrating decision makers and policy makers and all, being oppressed all the way to the top. All for them being oppressed and denied a voice. Obviously, the beast became the norm. Far from fizzling out and dying, it became omnipresent, became total, became totalitarian. The ideological takeover is damn near complete, and any who oppose will be cancelled. The Norwegian government, in its infinitesimal wisdom and lack of understanding of what a certain term means, in this case freedom of speech, gathered a bunch of people and created a commission on freedom of speech, there to decide what one is or is not allowed to speak. This is a contradiction in terms, if ever I heard one. But no matter, it gets even better. One of those chosen to take part in this most hallowed commission was of a certain, and for us delving into the insanity of the world at present, well-known political bent. Her real colours were shown as she took over administrative duties on a Facebook group wherein certain tender topics, such as equality and immigration, was discussed from a perspective not necessarily feminist, not necessarily progressive. Longish story short, she ended up banning anyone with whom she did not agree, deleting comments she did not agree with, and otherwise acted like a censorious cunt. Only the opinions which she agreed with was proper, all else was hate speech. And granted, this was only on Facebook, and Facebook is only Facebook after all. It does not, however, give me good hopes for our freedom of speech when one who is so eager to censor and ban things which she does not agree with is one of those chosen to decide what is or is not allowed speech. Hate speech is not free speech. Only a few are allowed to decide what is hate speech, though, considering what side it is that is frequently pushing for censorship, it does not bode well for our freedom of speech, gentlemen. But to get back to the Democratic Socialist Convention of conceited socialist censors, one speaker from the Democratic Socialist Convention of Champagne Socialist Censors, mentioned in the introduction of this rambling diatribe against all that is good and noble and proper, you will know him when you see him, really stood out to me. Remarkably so. Now, why did it stand out, you might wonder and ponder? And I'm glad you asked, kind and inclusive, non-gender specific person of non-individualistic characteristic. I'm glad you asked indeed, comrade. The man, you see, was wearing a costume. The man was bloody well LARPing. He was wearing a, most likely highly expensive, costume designed to show himself as a revolutionary of a certain political bent. There is no doubt in my mind, no doubt whatsoever, that this was carefully planned and bought and put together in order to project this image. It was so bloomingly obvious, right down to his carefully designed and perfectly tended to scruffy-looking 3-day stubble. Appearances matter more than all else. Superficiality has become the guiding light of our societies. The ideas matter less than the appearance of the one presenting it, which may very well be identity politics summed up in one short sentence. Appearance, not ideas. Superficiality, not depth. When one can be dismissed for reasons of being a white male, no matter the quality of one's argument, I fail to see it as anything but superficiality feigning depth. It is not particularly rare to encounter sentiments such as, well, you are a white male, so you should just shut up about this. I fail to see anything in such dismissals but a confession that the one being so dismissive has no argument, no rebuttal, no nothing, and so dismissal on basis of sex and skin it is. Which sounds an awful lot like sexism and racism, but that don't matter, for one cannot be sexist towards men, nor can one be racist towards white people. The ones who decided that one can be dismissed on the basis of being a white male decided that one cannot be sexist towards men, nor racist towards whites, and so be it. How very convenient. And these people are not strong and capable people. They are weakness personified, weakness and frailty weaponized. And let it be stated that, whether you believe me or not, I do not intend this to be an insult. Far from it, in fact. I am aware that it sounds as though I'm just crafting an insult, but truth be told, it worries me and I kind of feel sorry for these people. The celebration of weakness, the fetishization, the deification of perpetual victimhood. To view oneself as a victim all the time, to make one's whole identity that of a victim, and then to create a hierarchy of victimhood and of oppression. To live within this constantly, all one's life gnawed by doubt and by weakness and by a certain fear that one will, once the hierarchy shuffles a bit, be considered more privileged than one was and as such deserving of less. It is frightfully worrisome. And being a perpetual victim, basking in whatever beauty one perceives one weakness to grant one. It does not make for strong and competent people. It does not make for a generation capable of standing up to anything, when they are ripped up by their roots with every slight breeze or gust of wind. If one has been a victim of something at one point, and let's face it, most all of us have in varying degrees, the best one can do is rise above said victimhood. The best one can do is heal from it. And this creates strength. It creates self-respect, and it creates an ability to withstand hard times, to thrive even when seemingly impossible. A society cannot function properly when weakness and helplessness is the guiding light, when modern government must step in everywhere to maintain order, to such an extent that it decides what is or is not allowed speech, to such an extent that it decides that certain groups is more deserving than others of protection from having their feelings hurt. For that is all this strange hate speech thing is. Someone being protected from having their feelings hurt at the expense of someone else's freedom to speak their mind. Words, it transpires, have become violence, and actual acts of violence, particularly when enacted upon the out-group by the in-group, is not violence. Hate speech is violence, violence is not violence, particularly not when enacted upon the hate speechers, for they are violent through their speech and as such deserve to be met with violence. Political violence is quite alright, until it goes the other way, of course. The so-called mostly peaceful protests would be a good example of this. When society has decided, with the blessings of the government, that some groups are deserving of less protection than other groups, society sure as hell has got problems that need to be dealt with. A good starting point, a good way to deal with these problems, would probably be to extend the same protection to all groups, that is, to make everyone equal under the law. Such a radical notion that, terrifying as the notion that this is a radical notion is. Alas, hate speech laws do not grant us equal protection, far from it. For some, it is decided, are of a stronger constitution than others. I'm not entirely sure how this is not insulting to those supposedly being protected, but then again, I am a white and straight male, so I have no say in anything. And this is quite alright to state, see. And for my part, I think black lesbian women, be that trans women or not, should not have a say in anything, but that would be horribly bigoted and hateful, so I'll just keep my privileged hate-filled mouth shut. You see my point? In order to keep one's head above the water, one has to become strong, one has to have the fortitude to soldier on no matter the circumstances. One has to become like water, capable of flowing with, flowing through, flowing below, flowing over, rushing, standing still, moving, and, if need be, break down whatever holds free movement. Actual strength, whether physical or psychological, is slowly becoming more and more of a no-no thing, a naughty thing. Seemingly for it being tied to masculinity, which is also a naughty no-no thing in this era of the mighty freak out. And this says a lot, probably more than intended, about the view of the hive mind regarding femininity, but no matter. Stoicism is not a celebrated virtue. It has become a damaging and terrible thing, a dangerous thing, linked to toxic masculinity and other such horrible manly gender norms which are absolutely terrible and frightening and icky for some reason, mainly to do with the fifis of the feminist and social justice crowd. There are no differences between men and women, except when there is, when women can be made out to be better than men in some way. I find this remarkably interesting, given how our societies now attempt to condition boys and men into being, quote, in touch with their emotions, unquote. In essence, conditioning boys and men into a feminine model because that has to be the norm even for those who are masculine. And this of course means that men need to emote and feel like women do, that men must be forced, for lack of a better word, into coping with their emotions like women do. Differences don't exist, and if they do, they are a negative, not a positive. I really don't understand why we have become allergic to the mere whiff of difference, but we have. I assume it is because people who consider differences to be a negative views differences as meaning that one is better than the other, instead of it merely being differences. And given how differences are held in a glowing light and presented as a good and noble real fact whenever women can be made to be better than men, it seems likely that their view of differences is such, that it necessarily must come from or result in some manner of competition. And from where I sit, differences, particularly between men and women, mean that we complement one another, that we fulfill one another. Difference is a virtue and a strength in my book, not a vice nor a weakness. But, as stated, I am a straight white male, and so it does not matter what my opinions on things are, unless I agree with the zeitgeist. Then it matters. And Stoicism has come to mean that one denies oneself one's emotions, has come to mean that emotions are suppressed and then eventually boils over and explodes. This sounds absolutely nonsensical to my understanding of Stoicism, which has to do with controlling one's emotion. That is, to not be guided, ruled and dominated by them. In order to control one's emotions, one cannot help but be in touch with them. One has to be able to identify them, as well as their cause, be that cause external or internal, if one is to control them and not be governed by them. I would dare propose that one who is able to control his emotions and so make rational, logical decisions despite what his emotions tell him is way more in touch with his feelings than someone who shouts, breaks stuff, screams and otherwise throws temper tantrums. Someone who makes their decisions based on emotion rather than reason tend to not be a reasonable person. Someone who is guided by their emotions instead of being able to control their emotions are less in touch with their emotions. Gabbing about one's emotions does not mean being in touch with them. It simply means that one gabs about one's emotions. To make the claim that traditional masculinity means being emotionless is missing the point completely. It means controlling one's emotions, no matter their cause and no matter their impact. It means truly and really being in touch with one's emotions. Alas, as we have come to see in this day and age, self-control is not considered to be a good thing. Except when men are supposed to control themselves because women find men scary whatever men do. So men must be in touch with their emotions, but they must also control their emotions such as women demand it. Sounds like traditional masculinity to me, but that cannot be, for it is painted in the flashing flaccid light of feminist fancy. And the men who openly speak about their feelings and their experiences are dubbed as whiny man-babies amongst a whole slew of similar insults. But we don't need to think about that right at this moment. Self-control is a good thing, you see, but it must be self-control such as women desire it, not such as men do it. Men don't matter and don't get a say as per usual. Men's emotional lives are the domain of women, didn't you know? Particularly of feminist women. Because none but feminist women can speak to how men are doing and what men should do. Who else should speak on that? Men? You've got to be fucking kidding. Just a damned shame that women tend to find men who are open and expressive about their feelings to be such a turn-off then. Made evident by the male tears mugs perhaps, the I bathe in male tears shirts maybe, made evident by the whiny man-baby thing being so popular amongst those who claim to believe that men need to open up about their feelings perchance. You know what kind of man is open about his experiences, his issues and his problems? The ones the feminist hordes see fit to shame and label misogynist and other such horrible things. The ones from our neck of the woods. He pokes on us in the horrifying men's rights thing. We may be open about our issues, but it is not done such as feminism believes that it ought to be, and so it is wrong. Besides, we are just so blunt and mean in our speech, so overwhelmingly masculine in the way we choose to speak about our masculine issues that comes from being men in a society that does not exactly treat men decently, that does not exactly view men in a favourable light. How does feminism believe this exploration of men's emotions and feelings and so and such ought to transpire, how it ought to be and what shape it ought to take? It should be supportive of women and of feminism, not of men nor of masculinity. It must be done in the way feminism dictates and in the way feminism demands, which translates into shut up and listen, men. In a way, this men's rights thing is the most progressive damned quote movement unquote in the world. For heaven knows there has been precious little aid, help, concern, compassion, empathy and such thrown the way of boys and men. I mean, the claim is that men have always had it all, but that falters and fails the moment one dares look away from the top tiers of society and gaze but a little in the gutters and the graves. For being a society that supposedly benefits men over women, there sure as fuck is a lot of broken, beaten and bleeding men. Oh my, but patriarchy hurts men too. Seems as though it hurts men more than it hurts women then, if numbers, statistics and facts are anything to go by. But that is not what one should go by. One must go by feelings. Women feel more unsafe, and so that matters more than men actually being more unsafe. Solipsism ho, and add one more solipsist ho. Almost makes one believe that the whole thing is a lie, a sham, a fraud and a power grab by authoritarian tyrants seeking little else but money, power and complete and utter control. Seeking complete and utter revolution, in fact. Makes me want to use these words, female supremacy movement. Oh boy, oh how naughty. I've been a bad boy now, mother government. Please don't disappear me. Please don't cancel me. I've got a growing family to take care of. Very sorry for burdening you with my troubles and my issues. Very sorry for you having to deal with all that emotional labour. Sigh and harumph and other grumpy noises of a very manly variety. There's always been precious little empathy sent the way of men. Precious little societal concern. Just a whole hell of a lot of obligations, responsibilities and duties. So fuck it, I'm calling it. Men's rights activism is doubtlessly progressive. In fact, it is the most progressive thing in the world at the moment. Don't at me, brah. Oh boy. That one is sure to gift me enemies from all over the spectrum, particularly from the hopelessly regressive and reactionary feminist hordes who wish for nothing more than to keep, maintain and grow the incredible amount of power it has, the incredible claw-like, vice-like grip it has on the balls and ovaries of society. Behold the water. Water is cool. Water don't give a fuck. Water just flows and beats against the thing until the thing gives way and the water moves ever onwards. Water don't care. Be like water. And that concludes part 6. Join me next time for what I believe will be the last part, at least at the moment of writing, but that don't necessarily mean much. Inspiration is a hell of a thing and the flow even more a hell of a thing. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it more than my previous ramblings. Please like, share, subscribe, check out the links down below should you wish to purchase my books or stalk me on social media. And I'll catch you next time. This is my Reality here, signing off.